have to do the thing. You'll have to forgive me for being a little bit scatterbrained and not commit for the letter. I'm super psyched to have you here, even if I am eating. Are you? Well, that's an interesting philosophical question. Are you here if you're watching the stream? Okay. So I'm going to do the thing where I put you in the... that's the one, yes. Giant dice cam. That's for my Saturday special setup. Yeah. So, welcome to my channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Lee. They, them vibes today, but he or she is also fine. I'm kind of vibe better. I have my stream buddy Nick Venner, who's a fish. He's right. His bowl is right next to my computer, so he says hi. I do. What was I gonna say? Oh, yes. So, Warhammer 40k, that's what the stream is going to be. My, for those of you who don't know, I'll give a little background. In early 20-teens, I think 2013-ish, the company Fantasy Flight Games, which is a pretty cool company, got a license to... Oh, hey. Very good. Okay, that's very important notes. So I'm trying to do two things at once. I have a whole system where I send out a message to tell everyone that I'm streaming, except that usually I send it out, well, ideally I'd send it out before I started streaming, but today was a little, man, I barely had the streaming time. So what I'm doing is I've created this kind of vibe streamer. I'm live hanging out with you guys and chatting. And say hi in the chat. I really do appreciate it. But at the same time, telling everyone else so we can kind of gather a few more people here. I have some friends who I very wish to hope show up. Not that anyone watching isn't really cool, because I do love everyone who watches, but just a few people. But oh yes, Fantasy Flight Games. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Fantasy Flight Games in 2013 ish released a series of role-playing games in conjunction with Games Workshop. Now, Warhammer 40k was a really cool Games Workshop. It was a strategy game, tabletop strategy, but it had a lot of amazing lore. And as such, it decided that they wanted to do a bunch of things that played into that. Interesting. So if anyone wanted to, so people could play around in the universe, and it wouldn't have to just be a strategy game because it had such great lore. They had a Fallout in 2017. According to the publicity from around that time that's archived on the Fantasy Flight Games website, there's no bad blood. How much of that you believe is up to you. But getting your hands on a copy of these games is a little difficult. I would, of course, never and anyone, DACA should take note of this, suggests that pirating would be a viable course of action because that would be highly illegal. But I do have a copy on PDF. So, as such, I have been sharing it with you guys. I've been streaming character creation. I've been building this epic. The one I have on is called Rogue Trader. It is a what's the word? Rogue Trader. So, how to explain? In Warhammer 40k, I don't know how familiar all of you are with the lore, but there is a class of people called Rogue Traders who gain a warrant of trade by the Imperium of Man. And in doing so, they gain pretty much immunity to all basic domestic laws. I mean, heresy, all high heresy is still out of the question, but basic domestic laws, they don't have to deal with petty stuff like that. They also are allowed to go back and forth from the Imperium at will, which most people, once you leave the Imperium, you're out. Like, you cannot come back. Allowed to trade with Xenos, provided you're willing to have the knowledge that you're going to have to turn them over at some point to be genocided. But, what else? So, there's the demons, there's aliens who want to destroy humanity, there's heretics who have fallen to the forces of pure evil, there's the force of pure evil themselves, hence the demons thing. There's, a lot of dangerous things out in the warp, and which is the kind of realm of thought, the Immaterium, that allows for faster than light travel, but also is extremely dangerous and causes mutations, and also can let demons into real space if you have psychic gifts, which is why they have to be controlled so tightly, even though that leads to the persecution of psychics, because there's a lot. Warhammer 40k is a lot of lore. Like, if you have any specific questions, because I've learned the hard way that lore dumping it on people who have no idea what's going on is generally not appreciated. But I have I have one more thing I need to do, and then I promise I will start the stream proper and will only be 10 minutes late. So that is not bad. Beautiful. Okay. Now we're going to do this. I have one more bite of cereal so that I don't... Alright, I lied. More than one bite. Okay. Alright, are we ready? I know it can be a lot to handle, but... Ta-da! That's me. That's Lee. I don't know if any of you are watching, but let's see. We can check that out. Hey, I have one person watching. Hello. Welcome, friend. You're the only person here right now, but you're, of course, welcome. So I created this ship. I don't know if you've been following certain earlier streams. So for my Warhammer 40k characteristics, I really do love Warhammer 40k. So I've been putting together what's called a Rogue Trader crew, which is pretty cool. So I started with, if I can find the, it was Janthine, it's not Clyde. Yes. That's clumped. Yes. Um, yes, with Janthine, whose name I definitely... Oh, yes, that's what I put it in a different part on the character sheet. I am not very good at, organization. I'm learning to be better, at organization, but for the meantime, I'm still pretty at it. I also need to copy these down out of this notebook and replace the notebook because it is falling apart. One thing at a time. The first thing... Oh, sorry. Everything itches. I don't know why. Just took a shower. I do not know why everything itches, and I'm sorry. I guess scratching at itches on screen is rather impolite. I don't know. We're learning. Anyway, so first I started with Janthine, and then I created her. She was born on a world called Viseria, which I also world built on a previous Warhammer 40k stream. I've kind of building up like I would say expanded universe full of characters. I wish I could do art. If I could do art, I would draw them as OCs, and then they'd have a whole vibe, but I can't draw. So, basically, they're just... Same theory as OC. I don't know if you're familiar with the art, the world of young artists. And it is primarily young people who have OCs. I mean, they usually started young, and then you keep them, I guess. But they are often very visual and such. As such, what was I? Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I'm going to do it this way so it doesn't... as such, yeah... Okay. Sorry, there's also moths flying around, which is very confusing. As such, all mine are written, and this is what I have. This is what I do. I create these characters on stream, and I share them with you because I feel like it's something fun. And I do take suggestions. If any of you... we come up with a character tonight, for example, I will ask anyone who's watching for name, and if, you're here first, or for, Rochevier only has the name it has because it's the capital of for a different for my Wednesday and Friday streams I do Pathfinder First Edition world building, and I needed the name for the capital, and my chat actually named it for me, and it was very cool. So there are quite a few things. Ophi only had the name he had because Blue Box suggested the name as a portmanteau of Hoffa and Godi because he was a crime lord. Anyway, my point being, Viseria is actually the planet, because I've been doing each planet. I started with Janthine, and then I did her home planet of Viseria. Then we had Odette, and she was born on a ship. Not the Expectus Primus, which is the ship that they're all currently serving on. Yes. And I have a whole list of stats for the thing. We did a whole... because Rogue Trader does have rules for ship creation, because a Rogue Trader ship is such an integral part of the game. The whole thing of being a Rogue Trader. If you're a Rogue Trader without a ship, your warrant of trade is pretty much useless. So, basically... I put together the Expectus Primus, also named by the chat. So Odette was born on a different ship. And Yeah. And then, of course, we had Zio, who was also an arch-militant. So he and Odette, between them, were the fighters of the crew, of the high-ups of the thing. Because the ship, the Expectus Primus, has a very large fleet contingent of 26,000, give or take a few. So I'm not going to detail every member of the crew, but the top dogs, the kind of officers who run things. Or rather, the reigning coterie of, well, there's Harmon, our rogue trader. So, the theory behind rogue traders is that every ship has someone who's a warrant of trade. And instead of classes, the way Dungeons & Dragons have, or playbooks, the way a lot of the D6 version systems work, what you have instead is a playbook or a class. You have a career path. And if you end up with the career path of rogue trader, that means you have a warrant of trade. You're the captain of the ship, essentially. So if you were going to run a game of rogue trader, which I have in the past, most recent session I played of that was Saturday. I've been trying to get a Sunday session together, and if I can get the Sunday session to work with me, I might be able to stream that. Hopefully. I would very much like to stream an RPG for once. Sorry. This is the only stream where I ever break to feed the fish, I think, because he's such a good little fish. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And he does start giving me this, like, look in the middle of the stream. So there's that. Okay. If I get another camera, I could have, like, a little fish cam in the corner. But I do need my money for another camera. That would be very useful. I have a Ko-Fi, also. DM Lee. I know it's crude to ask, but I will put that in the... if I can. I don't think I have the right... we're going to have to do this a little bit wonky because I don't have the means to... Okay. Sorry. What I can do is this instead. Sorry, I try not to get distracted. I am very... I know it's crude to put this, but I do really could use the... Anyway, my point being, I could have a fish camp, but that's for far off time. You know, where I could improve the channel and get a better camera for here, or a new keyboard, so I could actually type and not have to do crazy things would be nice. I have a friend who can get me one I can borrow for a little while, so that's a start, but... Anyway, I had a point that actually had nothing to do with real life creator struggles or begging for money. Oh, yes. So I did Zyle's home, I role-built Zyle's home planet, also one of the other arch-militant. Harmon has the same home planet as Janthine because of the improbably similar path we rolled when we did the origin chart for them. So finally I decided to start going up the chart instead of down with my random rolls and start with an a rogue trader to create a captain for the ship, which I did, and her name is is, she has a name. Not that name, though. Yes. Oh, I know. Oh, we also have our navigator. Yeah, I forgot about her. I had built her on my most recent world building thing. Here we go. Yes, I went backward. And Jarian. We've been whenever I don't have viewers to name my characters, which for past quite a few I haven't. I've been rolling on random chart tables that we have. Oh, I'll show you the random chart tables, actually. Always fun to demonstrate things. I have a lot of them, for example. Oh, no. That. Some of them these charts, random rolling charts, I create. A lot of the ones for Rogue Trader I just pulled out of the book because it has a lot of really cool, for example, yes, that blocks my face. Hi. But if you look here, what you will see is a rolling table for random female names. So I got a 94 for her and rolled on the other chart, which is this one. And I rolled Yarian. I got a 45, so I gave him Yarian, and that was her name. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to take the chart away so I can sit up properly and still be in frame. Yeah. There seem to be very few people on tonight's stream, which is fine. I don't just stream, and all my streams, of course, are uploaded to YouTube for later. So if you're ever, bored out of your skull and you want to listen to me babble about how cool different tabletop RPGs are, absolutely. And it's practically 11:30 and I haven't even done. I was just explaining context. Okay, so we have a Rogue Trader. So for the next, oh right, so we also have a Navigator. Yeah, that's it. Let's put this in a little box to the side so we don't. Oh, and yes, the bear for Dagmar's bear. Okay, yes. All right, so that's talents and skills and Okay, right. That's this. Okay, so I created Frania. She's a navigator for our ship, and her homeworld, she's noble-born, but I was actually... So, this is where I would ask anyone in chat, if I did have someone who wanted to if you wanted to chime in. Sorry. I'm very sorry. If you wanted to chime in chat, whether we should switch, roll up another character, or go for Frenia's homeworld. I could also fill out the nitty gritties of right. So we have our poor traumatized navigator. I think what I'm gonna do is okay, so Nobleborn is either a High Lord of Terra. Well, Navigator families are their own clique, if you will, of how that works. So, essentially, the Navigator houses are these great houses, often centered on Terra, but with branches. You know what we could do? Let's figure out her Navigator powers. This is a good idea, because that allows me... I like to do. And it's quite... hopefully you'll find it fun, too. What I do tend to do is... No, that's not that one. It's Dr. No, Rogue Trader. Here we go. Core Rulebook. None of course. very much apologies. So, in the navigator section, if we were to go here, what we do is, she would have, I'll read a section on navigators. The great houses, and mutations, right? For centuries uncounted, navigators have led mankind between the stars. Theirs is a unique power to gaze into the warp and guide humanity's vessels across the vastness of the galaxy. This power affords them a special place within the Imperium of Man, and over time has won them great prestige and wealth. The contemporary navigator houses of the Navis Nobilite have a scope of power and influence that is breathtaking to behold, reaching from the farthest world to the vaulted chambers of the High Lords of Terra themselves. It is into this position of power and privilege that a navigator is born, gifted with unique and strange powers by blood of their ancestors. Although they may be among many within their brood, a navigator knows that they stand a head and shoulders above the common citizens of the Emperor's domain. They also know that with training, dedication, and influence, they may rise within the ranks of their house and perhaps even take the mantle of Novator, Lord and Master of the family. The origin of the navigator genes has been lost to antiquity, like so much of the Imperium's history, forgotten and buried beneath the weight of millennia of strife and decay. Give me half a second to do one thing, because there's a methodology by which yes. That way I can easily check the chat, and if any of you want to chime in, if any of you, I love reading I'm very sorry, I'm going to take one more bite of cereal. I love reading directly from the book. I'm still learning to navigate, so I can't let you see it, but essentially what I've been doing is, because the kind of reading through this, because it's really interesting and well written, there's a very Warhammer 40k stuff is written with this very stylized prose that you've probably noticed, and I find that very cool to read. I enjoy reading it very much, so I want to share that with you. But also, when I read through the book, then I can explain the thought process of what choices I make in character creation. And when we get to farther along, like, this has a lot of flavor text, because it's the beginning of explaining what the deal with navigators is. And then there's things like what type of households there are, and then we can actually figure out where she comes from specifically and what her role in the Imperium is, and do a little bit of world building from where she came from and how she ended up on the crew of the Expectus Primus, and what any links that might happen to any other crew members. It's just that kind of vibe. So, and I do enjoy reading the flavor text out, and sorry, I get very distracted by how cute McVenner is. Actually, fun fact, McVenner, the name McVenner comes from a Warhammer 40k Expanded Universe novel written by Dan Abnett, named after an Imperial Guard trooper, who is pretty cool. So I gave him the name McVenner, and it seems to suit him, so, he's vibing. Okay, back to navigators, and looks like none of you object, so I'm going to keep reading. Say hi in the chat. I'm going to be checking it every once in a while. I figure out, because I really do like to hear from you guys. Forgotten buried beneath the weight of millennia. Here, where was I? Yes. Of strife and decay. Some scholars speculate, however, that this unique subspecies of human was the result of long forbidden genetic tampering. Some say the hand of the Emperor was behind their creation in the early days of the Great Crusade, whilst other supposition claims that it was spontaneous evolution triggered by mankind's first steps across the void. Whatever case, the navigator gene, as it is now known, has endured across thousands of years, and without it, much like the astropath's gift, the Imperium would not exist and certainly would not be maintained. This mutation is not endured through accident, but through careful cultivation. A navigator is the result of focused and selective breeding and rigorous screening by their house at every stage of their development. Even when they attain the rank of full navigator and leave the protection of their household to take up the task which nature calls them, their family ties remain strong and bind them tight. reminding them where their true duty lies. Whilst Navigator serves a single purpose of guiding the ship through the warp, and has evolved admirably for this task, they are also capable of far greater control over the strange power they wield and putting it to other uses. These strange and little understood powers seem to result from Navigator's unique affinity with the warp, another gift altered genetic makeup. It is little is known about how Navigator's work affinity works, or exactly how it is that many Navigators are able to not only look into the warp but also enact their will on it to some extent, making subtle changes to the currents and tides. And then there's a little box. The power of Navigators in Rogue Trader. In Rogue Trader, Navigator characters have access to a range of powers, many only vaguely understood outside the halls of the great houses. These powers can allow a Navigator to do many things, ranging from glimpsing the future to perceiving the very flow of the warp itself. Unlike a Psyker, however, a Navigator's command of the warp is more innate and instinctive, and so he does not manifest his abilities in the same way. To this end, Navigators have a far more limited range of abilities than Psykers, but their powers are more reliable and in some cases more potent. Like a Psyker, though, a Navigator must choose which abilities he wishes to pursue. It's rare that a Navigator will ever master all of his powers and realize his full potential, though it is more than possible to become a master of a single ability. Navigator characters also suffer from mutation more than any other character, save any that succumb to the lure of the Dark Gods. And as their power grows, they will typically become slowly more and more corrupted in body and mind by both the debilitating nature of the warp and the ongoing effects of Navigator gene coding, which is both their curse and their blessing. There is, in fact, in Rogue Trader, a special table of mutations, one for random common mutations, and one for Navigator mutations. Although I think if you're a Navigator and you get high enough corruption level, as opposed to increasing your Navigator power, you do roll on the regular mutation table. That is, hopefully, mutations are kind of fun and random, and on planets they're frowned on. Individuals with mutations are heavily corralled, but to be fair to the Imperium, although there are also those who fall to the Dark Gods are the most mutated of all, and mutation happens through a connection to the warp, and warp is where demons come from, and they can come into real space through people's minds. So there's a lot of reasons to be suspicious of those who are mutated. Whether that's justification for hunting down and murdering or imprisoning anyone who has a mutation is, I mean, it's up for that's a whole thing. But that is a key factor of Warhammer 40k universe. And if you have any questions about the lore, because I know it's a lot of lore, let me know, because I consider myself if not an expert, then at least well-versed in Warhammer 40k lore. Common to all Navigators is the warp, or third eye. It almost always manifests as a literal mutation they bear upon their foreheads, although in some cases pre-planning and a cybernetic shutter implant made during adolescence will be needed to affect the full release of their power. This eye is what gives a Navigator his power to gaze into the warp and guide ships through its turbulent currents and storms. More than a mere additional sensory appendage, the third eye is the source of all Navigators' power, and they're linked to the Immaterium. Though through this eye they can see directly into the warp, and when their power is honed, pierce the material barriers and disguises, even delve into the souls of men. They can also use this eye to read the currents of the warp, its ebb and flow, and through this understanding subtly alter it, causing ripples that can be felt within the material of real space itself. In addition to these lesser powers that give the Navigator's warp eye, when fully opened, can kill, its baleful light shearing the very soul from those who look upon it, extinguishing them forever in a moment of blazing madness and agony. The warp eye is also the Navigator's most obvious mutation, but often not their only one. It marks them out as a mutant and divergent from the greater mass of humanity, whilst their position, wealth, and bearing serve to protect them from persecution, at least most of the time. That's what I was talking about with the persecution of mutants, is a very high value thing. Navigators are still feared and distrusted by many for their gifts, and not without cause. For this reason, navigators tend to cloister themselves away from other people, seek protection of bodyguards, and use hoods and cowls to hide their warp eye when in public. There is a whole thing. Few organizations within the Imperium hold as much power as the great navigator houses of the Navis Nobilite. Their position of control over nearly all Imperial shipping places places them in a rare place of power, one that sits almost beyond the reach of both the Administratum and even the Inquisition itself. It is a position that the great houses have mercilessly exploited down the millennia and used to gather vast wealth and influence to themselves. Though across a long span of years this power has risen and fallen, it has endured longer than almost all other imperial edifices. The only aspect of the great houses that matches their political endurance is their constant struggle with each other. Constantly struggling for position and favor, the houses use all manner of means to outdo their rivals, sometimes even engaging in open warfare against one another. Only the strict control of House Novadors and carefully maintained codes of navigators keep such conflicts from spiraling out of control. The Novador is a patriarch or matriarch that rules over the navigator house, the figurative and often biological father or mother of the family. It is the role of the Novator to hold the family together and manage their fortunes, fostering contacts and contracts, the house, and jealously guarding those already in its possession. Above the scores of Novators stands the Patronova, head of all the Imperium's navigator houses. From his throne on ancient Terra, he guides the destiny in the houses, ensuring their place of power within the galaxy. Whilst ostensibly the role of Patronova, and by extension Novators, is to manage the power of the houses and protect their interests from the greed of the Administratum or the ignorance of the Ecclesiarchy and Inquisition, they do in fact have a more important role to play. This role is in the cultivation and protection of the navigator gene, vital to the survival of the houses and continuance of the birthing and training of skilled and potent navigators. However, the competition between families has also led to each tampering with and altering the evolution of some of its children, in the hopes of creating more powerful and able navigators with which to defeat their rivals and win greater contracts. Over many centuries, this altering of the navigator gene has created many lineages, giving rise to some strains of the navigator gene in which certain powers, abilities, and mutations are more prevalent. Choosing your lineage. This is the part where we get actually interesting. This is where we get to character creation stuff. An actual, 38 minutes in. But we did get to read some fun. You did get to hear some of the background about the cool setup I've created within the Greater Imperium. The ship, the interplay, all of that. And we might do some rolling too, I think. Oh wow, okay. Okay, yes. So what we're going to do is open this up. Open that up. Alright, good to know. I'm still the only person who has said anything in the chat. And if you are, say hi. I don't bite, promise. But let's learn about the lineages for now. In the Imperium, there are thousands of navigator houses, each with a history that can be traced back hundreds, if not thousands, of years. But still, the number of navigators is a literal drop in the ocean compared to the numerous masses of humanity. All of these houses are not the same, however, either in their strength or makeup, and over the millennia, many have diverged from the first great families that are said to have exhibited the navigator gene. Some have dwindled and died off over the years. Some few turned outlaw, with many others have prospered in these divergent ways of life, creating branches and offshoots of the great houses across the Imperium. Whilst it would be impossible to catalogue and critique each of the navigator families, many can be grouped into broad categories, representing their unique strain of the gene as well as their area of influence and way of life. The four groups which are prevalent in both the Clixis sector and the Cronus Expanse are variously known as nomadic houses, magisterial houses, shrouded houses, and renegade houses. There's four. And I'm going to read all about them, and then since there are 4, I'm going to roll it on a d4. Yeah, we're just going to roll on a d4. This is going to be an interesting endeavor. For Ferris one, because it makes sense. I mean, what we're doing here on the stream is creating these very random characters. These amazingly random characters that can then be played with and, morphed. But, I started out each of her steps along the origin path, from her start in a noble house to, her study, constant study, her insatiable knowledge to know more, what the trauma that, each was decided by a roll of the die. Her desire for prestige to move up. Ooh, that could play really well into the navigator. But we'll see what house she's in first, which of the type of navigator house, and then we'll go from there. Yeah. Okay, let's read about the different types of houses and, see what the vibes are. Some of the great houses have forsaken ties of sector and system, relinquishing their terrestrial holdings. Instead, over the centuries, these navigator houses have taken wholly to the stars to become wanderers in Roma, their lines preserved on vast fleets of ships constantly on the move. To be a part of a nomadic house is to be born between the stars and spurn the life of a dirt dweller. It is also this long-term exposure to both the void and the materium that hones the skills of navigators from nomadic houses, giving them an understanding of space and the warp second to none. Some nomadic houses known to travel the Chronos Expanse include Termel, Xante, and Aline. I actually did invent, for my last navigator, 2 navigator characters that I created for personal games. Create House Valame, which, to be fair, is not a nomadic house anymore. Basically, their great-grandfather had been a member of a nomadic house, but was offered a settlement grant for a planet for defending it from, basically as part of his conscription into the Imperial Guard. He took it and ended up on Renthok and caused a construction boom, actually, in Isdenhive. But now serves as, a powerful family in Isdenhive. But they're still consider themselves part of the Valame, the greater Valame family, and there's, especially in the early days, there was a lot of marriages arranged by the Patronova of the Valame family, the nomadic house Valame family. They're the one terrestrial branch. It's actually kind of interesting. Although I don't know if you can use the word terrestrial when you create to describe planets other than Earth. I don't know. Alright, let's keep reading. Navigator character belongs to nomadic house, gains the following benefits. This is the mechanical stuff of what it means to be a navigator from a nomadic house. Lore of the Wanderator. An ingrained affinity with passage between distant and uncharted stars, and gains talented navigation warp talent, which basically means you get an extra bonus on your navigation warp rolls, which is a nice little perk when you're trying to navigate the warp, because bad things can happen if you screw up. A taste for the warp. Living in constant contact with the veil between real space and the warp, the navigator can read it like few others. A navigator can spend a fate point to automatically succeed in using a navigator power if degrees of success are relevant. The effect of the power will succeed by 1d5 degrees of success, with 5 counting as 0 degrees of success. Okay. Degrees of success. So, the way the mechanics of the game work, when you succeed at a task, what you do, when you want to do something and you're not sure if you'll succeed or not, like, negotiate or fire a gun and see if it hits a target, or make a melee attack, or a complicated athletics maneuver that might require some skill. What you do is you roll a d100 percentile dice. That would be, let me see if I can, yeah, these two. I will show you on my, I will bring up the dice cam to demonstrate this. So, I have these two. This is the 100. And here, like 10 and 4. So, that would be 10. I don't know if you can see. 10. I think it's easier to see the 7. Yeah, 70. So, that's a 4. So, if I rolled these, it would be 74. So, for example, 70 and a 0 on that means 10. So, just 70. Straight 70. A double 0 on this die generally means, so for example, double 0 and then a 6 would be 6. It usually means 0 unless it's a 0 on this and a 0 on this one, in which case that's 100. But as soon as one of them switches to something else, it's a completely different number, which I guess is how dice work anyway. But yeah, that's how percentiles work. So pretty much everything, any kind of check in Rogue Traders roll on percentiles. And what you're trying to do is roll under your ability, the target number, which is generally the score of the linked ability, because you have certain characteristics that form your stats. So you pick your characteristic and you try to roll under that on D100. Now, the target number can be modified, and generally you want to get this target number as high as possible to increase the chances of rolling under it. It can be modified by either difficult extenuating circumstances. So a GM might impose if you're trying to leap across a gap, if it's particularly wide, the GM might say it's a -10 because it's so wide. And it's, and there's oil dripping and they'll probably slip, so that's another -10. In which case you'd have to get under 20. So instead of having a DC you have to roll to hit, you're rolling an add from bonuses based on your characteristics. What you're doing is trying to roll under your characteristics with the modifier being the target number being modified by extenuating circumstances. Bonus, for example, if you take a turn to half of your turn to aim when you're firing a gun, you get a +10 bonus on the shot. Or if you, which means you give up movement, so you have to stay still. So it's a balance of, do I want the +10 or do I want to get in a better position? Stuff like that. So a talented warp, which basically means you'd get an extra +10 on any warp navigation check you made. So degrees of success, the way degrees of success work is if you get under by 10 or more, that's 1 degree of success. So, for example, I'll do an example roll, because, 92. Okay, that's not going to succeed in anything. Pretty much, okay, 21. That's actually, there we go. So, if my agility was 43, for example, and and it was an unmodified roll. They just said, roll me a characteristic check for agility, because it's really hard to keep your footing. And I said, okay, and I rolled it. It would actually technically be 2 degrees of success, because target's 43. So 33 would be 1 degree of success or less. 23 or less is 2 degrees of success. Now, for something like that, it wouldn't matter. But for things like, essentially what's a contested check is who has more degrees of success. Or, in the case you both roll really high, fewer degrees of failure. Because degrees of failure can also make a difference. If you get too many degrees of failure, so when you make opposed characteristics checks, like your barter skill versus their fellowship, they're rolling against their own fellowship and you're rolling against yours, and it's instead of who's the higher number, it's who can get farther from their score. So if your barter, if you had +10 to barter, and barter is a fellowship skill, no, barter is intelligence, so it would be intelligence, So you had a plus 10 and your intelligence was 37, which is pretty reasonable. So it would be 47 and you rolled 45, you would succeed, but if it was a contested roll and the other, the NPC or the other player character, depending on who you were working with, rolled a 18 and had a intelligence of 30, that's 2 degrees of success. So they would still win even though you rolled under your thing. Which, so if degrees of success are important for navigating the warp, it's, well, that's how that works. Tangent to explain mechanics, which is always fun. So, my point in all of that, and thank you for being patient with me, is I have to do this now so that I can pop that up to quickly check. Yes. Is that basically you can automatically succeed, but if degrees of success are important, you have to roll a d5 for it, which is half of a d10, although I do actually have a physical d5. But a lot of things are everything in Rogue Trader is either a d100, a percentile roll, a d10, or a d5, or so half a d10, basically. So that's a taste for the warp. Basically, you can automatically succeed, and then you roll for degrees of success. Then Scorn of the Dirt Dwellers. Those that have roamed the void for so long feel uncomfortable in the cultures of Dirt Dwellers and usually cannot wait to return to space. Whenever a navigator is on a planetary body and must deal with locals, he suffers a -10 to all fellowship tests and skills based on fellowship. Initial mutation. Navigators from a nomadic house begin play with a single navigator mutation rolled randomly from table 731 navigator mutations. They may develop additional mutations as normal when they acquire new navigator powers or increase their mastery of existing powers. So that's nomadic houses. So it's got 2 nice little bonuses plus a detriment. And complicates their lives in certain situations. Magisterial houses. Greatest in size and power are the magisterial houses. The roots of the original navigator families, these houses maintain mighty palaces on Terra, and their influence reaches to the very edge of the light of the Astronomicon. Magisterial houses maintain traditions and practices that have been served them for millennia. They are masters of the traditional navigator crafts and have more control over the malign mutations that afflict those with the gene. To be a part of a magisterial house is to know without question the purity of your blood and the ancient power and nobility of your family. Magisterial houses with influence in the Cronus Expanse include the houses of Benetic and Vorkal. A navigator character belonging to a magisterial house gains the following benefits. Warp focus. Warp Eye is the core of a navigator's being and his oldest and most potent tool. Once per game session, you may force a single opponent to re-roll a successful test when testing to resist the effect of Lidless Stare navigator power. So basically you can force them to have disadvantage. Like you can force them to re-roll a check they succeeded at because once per game session, because you just are that powerful, which is pretty cool. Pure genes. The navigator of a magisterial house are less likely to mutate due to their pure genes when they must test for mutation. See page 182. The test is considered routine, plus 20, rather than ordinary, plus 10. So you get an extra plus 10 on top of the usual plus 10 you get for rolling. I think you roll it as toughness, I believe. So it's a toughness at a plus 10. But those from magisterial houses get to roll it as a plus 20 because they have, good genes. Elevated, exalted lineage. The blood of the most ancient and powerful navigator houses gifts their scions with a position of prestige among the nobility of the Imperium. The navigator may call upon this lineage in social situations and gains a plus 10 bonus to any interaction skill test when dealing with members of Imperial nobility. Basically, you can pull strengths if you need to. Initial mutation. Navigators from a magisterial house begin play with a single navigator mutation chosen from the following options. Strangely jointed limb, elongated form, pale and hairless flesh, eyes as dark as void. They may develop additional mutations as normal when they acquire new navigator powers or increase their mastery of existing powers, but they get a plus 10 to resist it, so that helps. So basically, you get one of the less ones, because there are some really, you get to pick one of the less problematic ones to start with, and then and you get to pick it because you're just very few people have. You don't have to roll for it randomly because you're special, essentially. Shrouded houses. Shrouded houses have suffered great losses or shame within the more established dominions of the Imperium. They have opted to move their power base completely to the edge of the known space, where they cling to the bare strands of their former status and power. Though they may be rich in skill, knowledge, or lore, something in the past of shrouded houses has blighted them and reduced them to a state so far from their once exalted position that they are sometimes cruelly called beggar houses by their more successful counterparts. To be part of a shrouded house is to be part of a fallen line that is slowly rising again to stand defiant against those that once cast them down. Or at least, so you are told by your elders. Their loss in standing has often forced houses to flee to the margins of the Imperium and develop a cunning and opportunistic mindset, alongside a skill that is often lacked by more comfortably indolent houses. Some of the more powerful and influential include Modar, Yeshar, and the Rhaanlor Triumvirate, as well as the notorious Said House, which actually married into the Velame household because reasons when great-grandpa settled on the Renthok, but that's a whole other story. Navigator card belongs to a shrouded house, gains the following benefits. Destitute. So that's not a benefit, exactly. Navigator's fortunes are so low that he is little to nothing and is initially a drain on the resources of his fellows. The presence of a navigator from a shrouded lineage reduces the group's starting profit factor by -1. So basically, your chipmates always have to spot you money. A gaze to pierce the soul. The navigator has a keen understanding of a person's relationship to the warp, born of self-reliance and bitter musings. The navigator begins play with gaze into the abyss as a bonus power. In addition, you may rise above this ability above mastery to Paragon, giving a plus 30 bonus on all tests with this power. Okay, that's pretty cool. Stop that. Mercantile opportunists. Raised in a volatile atmosphere where the need for profit and advancement outweighed all other concerns, navigators have had to learn the skills of hard bargaining and contract hunting. Needs of their kind are normally sheltered from. The navigator gains a plus 10 to bonus to test with the barter, charm, and carouse skills. Initial mutation. Navigator from a shrouded house begins play with a single navigator mutation rolled randomly from table 7-1. They may develop additional mutations as normal when they acquire new navigator powers or increase their mastery of existing powers. No, that's a cool little calendar button. Cool. Renegade houses. Some of the great houses have completely forsaken the traditions and ancient practices of the navigator families in their quest for power, or may have been turned on by the rest of the Navis Nobilite, harrowed and driven into exile. Dabbling heavily in the genes of their children in order to improve their lot, their tampering often leads to hideous mutations and unconscionable monsters in their lineage, which leads to rejection by the Patronova and a hunt to extinction by the Inquisition. In some cases, however, it has birthed new strains of the gene and given rise to families with unique abilities and potent powers. To be part of a renegade house is to have cast aside the sacred navigator's traditions as small-minded and restrictive, and instead embrace the glory and limitless potential of your ancestry, or so the house believes to comfort themselves. It is whispered that the Cronus expansion is home to several renegade houses, like the secretive Gazmati or the infamous Nostromo. A navigator character belongs to a renegade house gains the following benefits. Fruits of corrupted blood. In tampering with the fundamental nature of their bloodlines, the renegade houses have created both monsters and marvels. The navigator begins play with an additional navigator power, and additionally, the navigator may also choose 3 navigator powers, which may include powers it does not have, but plans to later acquire. and gaining the plus 10 bonus to all tests with these powers, in addition to bonus from being an Adept or Master. So in addition to any other bonuses you might get, they stack, basically. In addition, all tests by others to resist these powers suffer minus 10. Oh, wow. That's pretty good. Unchecked mutation. Navigator is more prone to mutation and mental instability than any other of his kind, representing the tampering of the family line and a life overshadowed by doom. When taking tests for mutation, for gaining new power or increasing existing one, test challenges are +0, are challenging, which is a +0, rather than ordinary, which is a +10. And you begin to play with 1d5 insanity points, on top of many you might already have from other sources. Renegades. The price of dabbling on the unknown is high, and it has cost renegade houses in both security and status. Navigators from renegade houses begin play with 1d5 corruption points and the watchful eye of the Inquisition, ever waiting to uncover wrongdoing. Also, all tests that involve interacting with official bodies in the Imperium are at a -10 penalty. Initial mutation. Navigators from a renegade house play with 2 navigator mutations rolled randomly from the table. They may also develop additional mutations when they acquire new powers. Okay, so each house has a lot to offer. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna roll for it, and I am not gonna build this cool little chart because those are very difficult to build and really require a full keyboard if you're gonna do it. And it's kind of getting late, but I still want to roll it. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll. So this episode, I guess you would call them, was mostly just me reading lore and geeking out about it. I mean, it is a relation to character creation, so it's kind of adjacent to that. But yeah, it was a lot of reading lore, which I don't mind. Let me know if you thought it was, I wish I'd done more rolling and creating rather than just reading lore. Because I'm curious if you guys are as fascinated by the lore as I am, because it's really cool. I think so anyway. I know there's only, I think, one person watching, so you basically get full vote because you're the only one here. So, But, so Farina is going to roll, for her house. Alright, so I'm going to write this down. So we got 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 being Renegade. 2 being Magisterial. There's no rhyme or reason to it because it's going to be random anyway. 3 being, what's the technical term? Shadow. I think is the, there's a whole technical term for this. I just read about them. Nomadic, and then shrouded. That's the word I was looking for. And then 4th is nomadic. So I'm going to roll a d4. I'm going to put the dice cam up. Whoa. Oh, I still have the dice cam up. Okay, let's see. I always put my die with the highest side facing up. If I can, it helps them breed good mojo. Anyway, oh yes, so I'm going to use this d10. Put another one over there for now. Find 20 for this just real quick. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, beautiful. That's another one I should probably put up to 2. Yes, there we go. Okay, I'm using this d4. I'm going to roll it. Are we ready? This is my, basically one roll of the night, so Yeah, let's roll. Let's see what we got. 2, which brings us to magisterial houses. She comes from, like, good bloodline. And the question becomes, which means she has to, we get to choose the mutation. Well, I'm going to roll for it, but I'm going to roll, okay, so, mutation. Right, mutation. So we, let's see, let's go with the magisterial houses. They're shrouded, renegades are the last one. Okay, so magisterial are up here, and then we'll write down all the cool benefits she gets, and then we'll pick all the cool powers that we get. Okay, so so it could be the Venetic or Vorkol family. It could also be just another house that we haven't heard of. Hundreds of bloodlines, so very powerful. Make a very create such a family. Pure genes. Warp focus. So, okay, first we get a roll for figure out the mutation, because we don't have to roll on the strange jointed limbs, elongated form, pale and hairless flesh, eyes as dark as void. Okay, it's another 4, so let's, we'll roll another d4. Strange jointed being 1, elongated form being 2, pale and hairless flesh being 3, and eyes dark as void being 4. So, I have that written down. Okay, we're gonna roll it. Roll this same d4. Let's see what we get. Let's do it. 4. Eyes as dark as void. So I'm gonna write that down in annotation. Plus toughness is 44. No, 41, sorry. Okay. So that's worth something. Yeah, let's keep going with that. Okay, I'm gonna take away the dice cam, I think, for now, just for a sec. Alright, now we just move you over a smidge more so I can, okay, good. So what else do I get? Get that, once per session can force a reroll. Okay, I am appreciate everyone who comes out to join me. I know there's not that many of you, but still, I do appreciate all one of you. Although there might be a few, because sometimes my viewer counts are off. But I think after we get this settled, after I finish, I don't know. So nobles. Alright, and a plus 10. Okay, I'm gonna just go down here. I guess In Rogue Trader, Navigator characters have access to special Navigator powers that represent unique gifts of their own each. These powers are gained and deepened by spending experience. Each Navigator power divided into 3 levels. Novice, Adept, Master. These 3 levels reflect the Navigator's mastery of powers and understanding of the true nature of the warp. Hang on. Mysterious. Must be some other type of house. Alright, okay, wait. Whenever it gains a new power for the first time, it will start at the novice level. Thereafter, at each rank, they may expend experience points to gain either a new power or raise to existing power level. See the career paths of how you can do advancing. Navigator character can play with the lidless stare power and may choose one more power, or instead of choosing a second power, may increase mastery of one of the powers by 1 stage, which is really only lidless stare unless you're from a renegade house, in which case you have more options. I'm very sorry. As a result, does not suffer corruption points from warp shock, although can acquire corruption points by other means. So, immune to warp shock. Okay, immune to warp shock. Powers. Lidless stare, obviously. Unlike psychic powers, navigators do not need to summon energies to the warp or use an arcane psychic foci to activate their powers. Rather, their powers are a result of innate connection to the warp and the legacy of their genes. Because of these factors, navigator characters do not make a focus test to try and gather warp energy as a psyker would, or have a psi rating. Instead, whenever chooses to do an power, they must pass a characteristic test for it to be successful. Each power's description indicates which characteristic must be tested, plus any modifiers, additional effects for the degree of navigation gained. The most common characteristics are willpower, perception. In addition, any modifiers detailed the power description. Navigator base test based on level. Novice doesn't gain any, but Adept gets a plus 10, Master gets a plus 20, and apparently if you're high enough, you can be Paragon, which is plus 30, but you only get 1 power to be that in for certain houses, so. Any weapons, powers, creatures that have special effects on a character that is a psyker will have psyker that will have similar effects on navigator characters. Half action, unless otherwise noted, to use powers. Starship combat, a navigator may use 1 navigator power per strategic turn. At GM's discretion, the navigator may use more than power powers not affect starship combat. Note that navigators never need to roll for psychic phenomena or powers of the warp and cannot risk triggering these effects with the use of any of their powers. Likewise, any items, creatures, or psychic effects that would either cause or increase the chance of a psychic triggering powers of the warp will not affect navigators when they use their ability. So it's pretty cool. And it specifically says, this section presents an assortment of some of the most common navigator powers found in the Imperium. These are certainly not all of the powers that might be found. The Imperium is a vast and strange place, leaving wiggle room in case you want to custom build powers or use from secondary sources like homebrew. A cloud in the warp. By understanding and perceiving the currents of the warp, the navigator can hide his presence from those that would use the imaterium to detect him. Whilst it does not in any way mask his presence in the real universe, it can ably hide him from detection by psychers and confuse creatures whose essence and existence are linked to the warp, such as demons and other warp entities. As Navigator grows in power, it can become harder to detect, as well as being able to mask others if they stand nearby. So that's Novice. By making a willpower test, Navigator becomes shrouded in material cloak, forcing those that use any kind of psychic sight, detection, or divination to make a challenging plus 0 perception test to see with such powers. This power also has the same effect on perception of all demons and warp entities. This power will last as long as the Navigator maintains it, however, most does so, not use any other powers. So, Adept, same, except the test is not a 9 is 10. The same, except the power is a radius equal to Navigator's willpower bonus and meters centered on a person. Any creature within the radius may be shrouded at the choice of the Navigator. Okay. I'm really sorry. Oh, okay. That cover of the notebook came off, so that's fun. I'll have to figure out what to do about that. I think... I know it's barely even 12. Actually. Foreshadowing. With a successful perception test, Navigator draws 3 secrets from the future. Spend a secret at any following to gain a plus 10 bonus on any test. Using one secret in this way carries no danger. However, he may choose to spend either of his other 2 secrets to add an additional plus 10 to the roll for each secret spent. For each 2 additional secrets, each additional secret used beyond the first, Navigator must roll d10. If the roll comes up 7, 8, 9, or 10, the secret causes the Navigator to suffer a minus 10 penalty instead of getting a bonus. Secrets not used in the following round are lost as time marches on. Using this power more than once in the same hour is dangerous, as no one should know too much about their own future. For every use after the first in a single hour, the Navigator suffers 1d5 insanity points. Oh, wow. If you're an adept, the secrets will only deduct rather than add on a roll of 9 or 10. And then as a master, you get the secrets for 5 rounds, so you can parcel them out a little more. I like that one, actually. I'm gonna go with that one. Also because Cloud in the Warp. It's a good no, that's foreshadowing. Alright, Lidless Stare and Foreshadowing. I think that fits her character. We still haven't figured her house, but I think that's for another late night Warhammer 40k session. I might try doing more during the week. Thursdays are difficult, but not impossible. I might do an afternoon tea one on Thursday, but do Warhammer. That's a possibility. I can't do evening, late nights on Thursdays the way I used to because I have a friend offered me a game, and of course I said yes. So I'm in that game on Thursday nights. As opposed to here, talking to all of you. I really appreciate hanging out with. Thank you for stopping by. And please have a good night, all of you. Sleep tight, and see. I'll see you at 1:30 tomorrow if you want to come. If not, I'll see you when I see you. I hope it's soon. You're under, of course, no obligation to come to the streams, but I do really appreciate it. All right. Good night.